One thing that we've talked a little bit about recently is the LIFO effect, pulling that term from inventory and operations management and applying it in a human capital context. The idea that workers who are the last into an organization are typically the first out when you hit a downturn. Walmart has just announced that it's going to be laying off 200 workers from headquarters. And this kind of follows a trend of really well-known names, Ford being one, Microsoft, Facebook. All these companies have announced cuts to workers at the white-collar level, or at that white-collar workers who are working in roles that I think have seen over the last 24 months a lot of churn, a lot of turnover, because this is the kind of worker that in the last 24 months has had a lot of leverage in terms of chasing money. And so, I mean, we've seen it with our clients. We've seen it really everywhere in the job market. With 4 million people every single month finding a new job, to dive deep down into those numbers and say, okay, what part of the economy is actually doing that? Typically, I'd say it is probably white collar work. Yes, you have frontline kind of customer service. You've got blue collar work that they're seeing a lot of churn to and a lot of turnover, and it's difficult to hire at all levels. But where people are typically, if you were to make a caricature, overpaid for their production, maybe, if you put it that way, it's typically white collar workers. And in a macro environment right now where companies are issuing weaker guidance, they're coming short on revenue. Everybody's seeing revenue growth fall, and Walmart in their decision to lay off 200 individuals is saying that they're seeing profits on the rise and fall. A lot of this can be seen as smokescreen for these companies to now be able to get rid of or release these workers that they've had to make hires in the last 24 months that maybe now they look back and say, we don't really need this level of human capital, this level of talent, or in terms of numbers, that is, this quantity of talent. And it's something that James on his channel has talked a lot about, which is, in this world where everybody was hiring dramatically and really investing a lot of time and effort and resources into hiring over the last 24 months, because all the news around us and all the noise was that hiring was difficult. And of course you had inflated demand from stimulus and lockdowns. He mentions a lot that the companies are hanging on to workers that they don't really want. We've seen Google and Meta and all these companies talk about productivity over the last couple of weeks. I think productivity has been an issue for a long time, especially as you think of kind of the transition to remote and the change in kind of the way people work. I think tracking productivity and making sure that your workforce is as productive as it can be is challenging. And in that, you've got workers that can hide, especially at these big companies. I mean, if you think about the Walmart layoff, 200 employees being laid off, and their total workforce is something like 2.3 million globally and 1.7 million in the US. Like, it's a tiny percentage, but it is this opportunity in this kind of a macro environment for the company to say, okay, we've at least got some smokescreen, some cover to make layoffs to parts of our workforce that we feel like maybe we'd be better off without. And so it's an interesting time. I think, the cynic in me sees a headline like that and sees a tactic as something like the LIFO phenomenon. And but of course that's 200 individuals who have lives, and then this is their livelihood being affected. So it's always tough to see layoffs. And you hope that these individuals get the support that they need through, decent severance packages or outplacement services, whatever that may look like. But I think this is something that we're going to start to see I mean, we're seeing the big companies do it because they've been the ones who've done the most hiring, in terms of volume over the last 24 months. They've got the most resources to apply to hiring. But this is something that I think we're going to start seeing across the entire economy, where companies now have the reason, even the excuse to make strategic layoffs, to kind of clean up their workforces, to clean up the teams that they have, and start to maybe remove the workers that they had to bring on just for the inflated demand, but that we're not really a fit on whatever level, whether that's productivity, not a fit on culture, not a fit on, philosophy, whatever that is in terms of the definition of fit. But now companies have this reason to do it, and I think this is just the start. So going forward, expect more large cap companies to do layoffs at the white collar level, I'd say. And then also expect smaller companies, I think, to start doing smaller scale layoffs or strategic kind of terminations and severances to clean up their workforces, to account for or to make up for some of the hiring decisions that were made over the last 24 months.